Hello, everybody. This is Jeremy from Encompass. You may notice on the screen that I look like Ashley. I'm sitting in for Ashley today, but we will get started here in just a moment. All right, we will go ahead and get started. I want to double check here. Looks like we've got a couple folks on. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. There is a poll question, so if you would be so kind as to address that poll question, it would be fantastic. It's about software integration. And the question is, do you currently use an integration solution? So you can go ahead and make a choice on that. With that, we will go ahead and get started. Josh, can you take us to our first slide?
Yes, sure can.
Also, just to avoid any confusion for those logging into the webinar, there was some technical difficulties this morning. So Doug Jacobson, who was going to be doing the presentation, has not joined us. So his name is on the screen, but actually doing the talking today will be Josh Patrick.
Hey, everyone. Jeremy, can you see the screen?
I see the screen. Can you take us to the next slide?
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Just want to make sure we're there. All right.
All right, perfect. So just a little bit about Encompass Solutions. Encompass has been around for over 20 years. We do have a foundation in implementing ERP software. Our headquarters is in beautiful Greensboro, North Carolina. We've got over 40 staff members. And as a company, Encompass really focuses on manufacturing and distribution. So our team has many years of experience both in industry and in implementing ERP solutions in the manufacturing and distribution space. Next slide, please, Josh. We are an Epicor certified partner. We've been an Epicor partner since 2003, and we are a gold certified partner. So what that means is our consultants are certified with the same training and implementation methodology as the Epicor direct team is. We have a very strong collaborative relationship with Epicor. I can assure you that most people on this call probably talk with folks from Epicor every single day. And we do focus specifically on the manufacturing Epicor Kinetic product for Epicor. So with that introduction to Encompass, I will go ahead and turn it over to Josh Patrick to walk us through today's. Oh, first we got the poll question, and we've got 50-50. We've got some people that said they do not use an integration solution, and some said they're not sure. So hopefully this is a very informative session for all involved. So with that, go ahead and take it away, Josh.
All right. So once again, I'm not Doug Jacobson. He had some technical issues this morning, so I'm filling in for him. My name's Josh Patrick. I have been working with Epicor for about 15 years now. Started on older versions of Vantage and have kind of grown with the product all the way through where we are now with Kinetic. As part of my experience in Epicor, I'm on the technical side, so I'm a developer by trade. You know, over the years, we would do a lot of integration projects, right? So Encompass has you know, always been a partner that comes in. You know, we try to solve, you know, business problems. One of the most common are, you know, I have a CRM or I have a finance tool that I want to integrate with my ERP system. And, you know, to that point, what we have found throughout, you know, our experience is that these are very complicated projects. A lot of times, especially in the past, they are very rigid projects. So, you know, once you have the solution in place, if you had one tiny little thing change, it could break the entire integration. historically they were unscalable. That's definitely changed a lot over the last few years with a lot of the iPaaS, which is integration platform as a service, as well as just some of the newer technology. But we found that a lot of them were unreliable, and just kind of hard to massage and change and monitor and fix problems. And the other thing we found a lot, myself especially, is that a lot of our projects were very similar. So I use CRM all the time, and you'll see in this particular presentation, I use Salesforce.com as an example, because CRM is a very common integration point. A lot of people want to leverage products that are specific to CRM, and they want that to integrate back into their ERP system with customer information or what have you. And we found that we were doing a lot of projects, not exactly the same, but very, very similar projects. So, everybody wanted contacts to come in or customers. And so kind of speaking to the past, and currently there's, a lot of different integration options out there. For those of you who've been with Epicor for a long time, Service Connect was the integration platform of choice. So, it allows you to integrate with, what at the time were, very robust technologies. You could pull in DLLs from Epicor. You could leverage pre-existing schemas that Epicor published and let you pull those in. For any of you who have developed in Service Connect, it could be very cumbersome to develop and debug. It had a lot of workflow, a lot of arrows and sub workflows, and anytime something went wrong, you'd have to trace those messages all the way through. You also needed to run it on additional server and software, and if you ever changed technology, you had to remap. Maybe not everything, but definitely anytime you upgraded, it was a project. The other option that still exists today, and actually Epicor has done a really good job with their later versions, starting in 10.2.400, I believe, the RESTful Services API, was made public. So you can, literally there's nothing stopping you from developing a point-to-point integration. My Epicor is going to talk to my Salesforce and vice versa. In those cases, you don't have any licensing fees. You can kind of use the tools that are already within the platforms that you're using. And that processing is, kind of real time for the most part. There are ways to get around that. But it is very non-scalable. You do have to reinvent the wheel, kind of what I was talking about. If you've done one customer integration, you've got to do it all over again if you're going to write a new, endpoint there. And then lack of visibility, and then synchronous processes can also be a problem, right? So you don't want to hold your users up from processing. And then there's the commercial iPaaS systems. So things like Zapier, JotForms, Jitterbit. Epicor obviously has Automation Studio, which there'll be a session on. I believe it's next week. You have Microsoft's Power Automate as part of their Office platform. There are a lot of different options there as well. And they have a lot of pre-built endpoints, a lot of good things, right? A lot of things that are already built for you, a lot of, visibility, it's pretty robust systems for the most part. On the other hand, there are separate licensing costs and monthly costs a lot of times with big software providers. For Power Automate specifically, Epicor has to be an endpoint in one of your workflows if you're using the Epicor licensing. So for some people, that can be somewhat of an issue if you're wanting to not only integrate Epicor with Salesforce, but maybe integrate Salesforce with SAP Concur or something like that. Then you can't really use it for that side of the integration. And then a lot of times there's a different technology stack that you're kind of having to deal with. So, Epicor is running on Azure. Your platform that you choose may be running on Amazon Web Services or Google's cloud. And then the biggest thing that we kind of run into with a lot of these, and quite frankly, a lot of the integration projects in general, is lack of domain knowledge. So, those commercial iPaaS systems understand their system very well, but they don't necessarily understand the the systems that they're integrating, if that makes sense. So again, kind of going back to our experience and all the things that we had seen as we were going, we kind of took, okay, what have we learned in all the integration projects? What are the products that are out there, the technologies that are out there? And we wanted to find out, okay, what makes an integration successful? So flexible is one of the biggest things, right? Like if something changes, we want to be able to very rapidly make adjustments to our integration to include new user-defined fields or new business processes that need to happen either before or after the particular integration that we're dealing with. Scalable. As my business grows, as my transactions grow, is my integration going to keep up with that traffic, right? That transaction load. Visible. So when you have issues, when you have errors, or when you have successes, can you see that those events happened in your system, right? You want to be able to know I had an error so I can go back and fix it and I can adjust it, because errors will happen no matter how well thought out your integration is. Reliable, keeping uptime, making sure you're not down all the time and having to reboot servers. Secure, obviously in today's world, security is a huge thing. And again, kind of going back to knowledge, understanding the systems that you're integrating, both at a technical level and a functional level. We found that as part of our integration projects, one of the biggest challenges we face during any integration project, even today, is making sure everybody understands the business processes and making sure the system that is being sent from or received to in this integration is getting the information that it needs, that that whoever is helping us design this integration understands that if I want to create a sales order, then I have to have a customer first, for example. So those systematic functional dependencies and just domain knowledge within the platform. So that's one of the things, kind of to Jeremy's point earlier, having so much experience and being so, integrated with Epicor, that is one of the things that, we really do leverage as part of our integration projects. So to that point, you hear a lot of stuff today about low code, no code. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I'm a little biased because I'm a developer. And while code is a four-letter word, it's not necessarily a bad word in our opinion. So when we built Encore, our iPaaS solution, we wanted to make it so that we can actually code in our system because, quite frankly, we have a lot of expertise, and so do a lot of our customers in the Microsoft stack and C#, in being able to do code very quickly and dynamically and effectively. And we found that it wasn't necessarily a bad thing that you had to write a little code to do your integration, because there are so many complex things that happen as part of the integration that sometimes low code can equal low flexibility, if that makes sense. So we do do not hide that we we do actually code in our integration platform. But kind of our philosophy, when we were building Encore, is that, kind of going back to my comment before about how we were sort of redoing a lot of the same integrations over and over again, we thought, okay, when we build our integration platform, we want to, take that 80 to 90% of what is always the same, right? So it's always, when you create a customer, you always need an address, you need a phone number, you need a customer name, those kinds of things. But then everybody has their own business unique challenges as part of that integration. So, when you were having that customer be created, you may want, a particular UD field, right? To put it in Epicor terms, like I'm capturing custom attributes in Salesforce that I want to pass through and store in Epicor, or vice versa. a good example in a lot of our projects, especially Salesforce specific, some customers that we're working with want their contacts to live on a customer. Some want those contacts to live on a ship to. Some want them to live on both. Some want them to transfer to the sales order. So there's a lot of nuance in, after I create the customer, sort of what's that last 10% to get it exactly to fit my business. So that's our philosophy. Is we built individual endpoints, so like the customer integration, the sales integration, the part integration, which I'll talk about in a little bit. That's kind of the standard, like this is, how you integrate a Salesforce customer to Epicor, or how I send an AP invoice from SAP Concur to Epicor. And then the 10% on top of it are the little deltas that we, add our code to specifically handle your business, your business needs. So talking a little more about the Encore architecture, it is 100% cloud-based. So we, landed on Microsoft Azure for a variety of reasons. One, it's a very secure platform and stable platform, but also because Epicor, uses it well. So we're in the same technology stack for anybody who's doing development. We created message queues within our Azure stack that allow for both performance and redundancy, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But all the messages going back and forth from the disparate systems do land in a queue, so that they're, if something were to happen when it breaks, or a communication was down from one system or another, they can be reprocessed. And you have that history there. We have notifications, again, going back to that visibility point, via email, via text, via web portal. So, your team who supports this integration can see messages real time, can understand that things are down, so that, things that are mission critical don't sit, in, a vacuum somewhere that people don't understand there was something that broke. Power BI, for anybody who is an Azure developer or maybe has a developer background, is Microsoft Azure's way of capturing analytics and KPIs. So, as part of our Encore platform, we have Power BI monitoring analytics and, the transactions and uptime and, all kinds of different error rates and things like that we can, monitor to make sure is working properly. And then again, we are code first, just meaning that, it's not a drag and drop solution. We work with you to, to build out that integration, and it is, developed within Azure itself. Talking a little bit about, I kind of mentioned it earlier, the RESTful APIs, and just kind of looking at a high level, so you can maybe get a visual. Epicor does have RESTful services, which for those of you who may not be developers, that's just a way, it's, a very modern way of accessing business logic from within cloud-based systems or on-prem systems in Epicor's case. So we have RESTful services that we've deployed as part of our Encore platform in Azure. So Epicor sends information to Azure. Azure receives it, processes it, sends it to Salesforce, and vice versa. So Salesforce can send to Azure and back and forth. So we're leveraging those RESTful services that are already built into Epicor as part of this integration. And one of the other things that really exposes is in later versions of Epicor Kinetic, I think 10.2.700, it was finalized as well. But Epicor functions have become a very powerful tool to write logic in your Epicor Kinetic environment, and they're exposed through the RESTful API. So we're actually able to even write custom code on the Epicor side and then invoke that from the platform as well. So if there's something, completely unique to your business that isn't a standard Epicor thing, like, for example, I recently worked on a certification project where there's a UD table that houses certs, and, we can send those down, store those to the Epicor function and do that as well. So A little more detail, I promise I'm not trying to be too technical, but I understand we have a lot of technical folks on the call who probably want to understand a little more about how things are working under the covers. So we are using the RESTful services. We can use WCF services as well. Epicor sends that message to an inbound message processor. Our Encore platform reads the message. The message is self-identifying, so it knows who it's going to, what kind of message it is, and that message has the information within it to do what it needs to do. So the message that gets sent will have all the information that it needs, and then it drops it on a queue processor. This is that redundancy I was talking about. It does take it back up to Azure table storage, so we do have secure, for those of you who have security concerns, this is all stored encrypted at rest, so all of the data is encrypted. And then application insights, again, our KPI and monitoring tool and our reprocessing console, which I'll talk about in a second, are all linked to that table storage so that the processing can happen without, kind of decoupled from our monitoring and information. So I guess I'm going to do a little bit of a demo just to kind of show you at a high level one of these integrations. So as part of Encore, we offer the platform as a service, but then we also offer pre-built endpoints. So for example, our Salesforce.com endpoint is kind of a standard pre-built, like this is what we know most people who want to integrate Salesforce with Kinetic ERP will use. So we'll have parts, customers, contacts, quotes, opportunities, and sales orders. So our standard implementation in this case, inventory or part master information goes from Epicor to Salesforce. Customers and quotes are both bidirectional. So when you update one in one system, it updates in the other. Quotes and opportunities are a little bit that verbiage in Salesforce. For those of you who've done Salesforce projects, the quote and opportunity is a little bit of a nuance. Again, that is kind of that 10% that we need to work with you on a project when we engage. And then contacts are bidirectional and sales orders are bidirectional as well. So that would be one prepackaged endpoint. And we also have a Concur endpoint for AP invoices, for example, and a HubSpot endpoint. So those are, we can either do custom integrations through the platform, or we can kind of start with these pre-built endpoints and then customize these as well. So there's a few different options as far as talking through, what makes the most sense for your business. Just as kind of a high level, what I'm about to kind of walk you through. So on the Epicor side, it's a really small footprint. It's actually a small footprint on most systems. So on Epicor, we have to create API keys. That's what allows the systems to communicate. All the code is set up in either method directives or Epicor functions so that it's all server side on the Epicor instance. So it's not, bogging down your UI. And we also have a couple UD fields in the solution that we install that track things like the ID to keep the two, customers in sync. For example, Epicor has a customer ID, Salesforce has a customer ID, and the systems need to know which ones those are. On the Salesforce side, we create workflow actions, outbound messages, and again, those custom fields to track that that back and forth information and keeping those two in sync. If this were another system like HubSpot or ShipStation, and they have webhooks or things you can trigger out of that system, it's kind of the same concept. You would set those up on the system you're integrating with Kinetic, and it would send those messages to Encore and process in the same way. So real quick, I'm going to walk you through just a really high level example. Hopefully this will come over correctly. So the first thing I want to do is bring over my Epicor instance. And I want to first just show you an example of the method directive that's in the system. So we look here on customer. I have on the customer update directive a post-processing. So once that event has finished, once you've updated a customer, it has a SFDC customer update. So it's basically a pre-built method directive, and you can see how light the code is if I pull it in here real quick. So it's just a really light code that formats a message that literally all it's sending is just the customer number that we're using. So you can see it's just a few lines of code. All we're really doing is putting the customer number in, and that's it. So that when a customer gets executed, it's a very light message that gets built and sent instantly to Encore. Encore then picks up that message, and it has all the information it needs to query back into the Epicor system to get that information. So, all I'm sending is the customer number, because that in the company, because that uniquely identifies the customer in Epicor, and then that's going to send it up directly. So I'll just kind of walk you through here. So that's what was set up on the method directive side. And then this will work in Kinetic. It also works in older versions of Epicor as well. Again, this all being server side, allows us a lot of flexibility. So I'm just going to create a new one. My son is a big baseball player, so y'all are one. Set it up as a customer. And then territory is going to be required for me, so I'll go ahead and grab that. Greensboro is one of those interesting places. I'm not sure it's 100% southeast or east coast, kind of in between. So all I'm doing here is saving it. I created this customer, y'all 01, and it's gone through, and that message from the BPM came back that the customer information has been submitted to Salesforce. So that's really, all it is on the Epicor side. So, for sales orders, for quotes, it's the same concept. There's a method directive that gets installed as part of a solution, and that gets, that gets the right endpoints put in for your environment, and then it handles the communication pretty seamlessly that way. So pulling up Salesforce. Many monitors here. I want to go and look at my accounts here. Sometimes it does take just a second for it to come over. So while it's doing that, let me go ahead and show you, for time's sake, just the footprint here on the Salesforce side. So sending information back and forth, you're really just using their standard workflow, and most software as a service products have all these concepts. So this is just a workflow rule. You can see I have when an opportunity account or a lead is created. So this is sending back that information. So it has a message, it calls that message, sends it back. It's got an endpoint that it hits. So, again, for the technical folks on the call, that's it. Okay, so y'all baseball has come through. Look at it here in our, there it is. And you can see that that's that Epicor ID that I was telling you about that we add to Salesforce, that it keeps the two in sync. And then, all the information that I typed in. And again, this is configurable. So, again, that last 10% that we're talking about, if you want ticker symbol to come through, or you want SIC code, those little things are how that makes a difference. So so basically that message, writes it to Encore. Encore sends it to Salesforce, and that's how the whole integration is working. So just to kind of show you one last thing as part of the demo, let me pull my browser over here. So this is the reprocessing console I was talking about. So if you look at this message, right? So here is the y'all baseball message that we just created. I can see the message here. So it's saying that it created the parent account y'all baseball. If there was to be an error here, it would show up in this message. So this would be the message that either came back from Encore directly, so like it couldn't find the customer ID or customer number that was sent, or if a message comes back from Salesforce and adding it, you would see that here. So we really developed this reprocessing console with our customers, as they were using it, wanting to be able to do different things. So we have a reprocess. So let's just say, for example, that customer number, let's say it was an order, a sales order, and the customer hadn't been created yet on the Epicor side. Then you could create that customer manually on the Epicor side, hit reprocess, and it would automatically send the message that was saved off over again. And if I do it now, it's just going to say that the transaction is not an error and can't be processed, so it prevents you from doing it that way. There's also a search capability here. So, if I wanted to just see, what happened to my y'all baseball account, I can, filter it down based on, what I'm looking at or what I'm searching for, if I'm looking for a specific transaction. And then there's also an Excel export option that will export the entire transaction viewer to Excel, so that you can report on it, or look at it in Excel if you prefer. So that's all I was really going to show you as far as the demo goes. Again, just kind of from a deployment standpoint, we can deploy it in several different ways. So Encompass has an Azure multi-tenant option. So you're sharing it with multi-tenants. Everything does stay in your queues, identified the right way, but it's not completely isolated from, other customers. There's also a single tenant. The single tenant is more for, government or government contractors that need their own instance. We can spin up a single tenant and deploy the same assets to that as well. That's a little bit different of a licensing price. And then customer hosted, we also have, if you have your own Azure instance, so if you're an Azure shop and you want this solution hosted in your environment, we can also deploy it there. The one thing to know about that is that it does add a little bit on the maintenance side, because things that we would normally be doing just to our environment needs to be done, kind of as a duplicate effort to yours, to keep things in sync. Just an example of a lot of the integrations that we've done in the past. Dynamics 365, Salesforce, ShipStation, SAP Concur, HubSpot, really any system that has a RESTful API. We also have database endpoints, so we can talk directly to a database as long as that database is exposed to the cloud. File watchers, so picking up Excel files and those kinds of things is definitely something we've done a lot of in the past as well. So those capabilities are there as well. I kind of flew through it. I hope I didn't go too fast, but that's pretty much the presentation that I had for you guys today. Are there any questions that I can answer or not answer, which happens occasionally as well?
Yeah, we do. It doesn't look like we've had any questions during the webinar so far, but we'll give it a minute here. If anybody wants to ask a question in either the chat or the Q&A box, please feel free to do so. and I'll keep an eye on that. In the meantime, would you mind going to the next slide? And
Absolutely.
thanks very much. We did want to also tell you about a webinar that we have coming up, which had been mentioned earlier about Automation Studio. So we'll have a webinar about the integration of workflow capabilities with Automation Studio coming up in just a couple of weeks here on February 6th. And it does not look like we have any questions that have come in. You want to go to the next slide if you would? All right, perfect. Well, we appreciate everybody joining us today. If you do have any questions about the webinar, want to follow up and learn more about Encore, please feel free to reach out to us. You can give us a call or email us at the information on the page here, or go ahead and scan the QR code and you take you to our website where you can fill out a contact form. So appreciate everybody joining us today. And again, if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Have a great day and a great rest of the week.
Thanks, everyone.